Driving along the coast, you might find yourself on a massive multi-lane highway suspended right over the ocean. But if you keep driving, you'll eventually run out of road. It just stops, dropping off into the open water. To understand why a major highway is missing a massive chunk of pavement, we have to pull back. We're nowhere near mainland Europe. We're in the Indian Ocean, nearly 9,000 kilometers away, on the island of Réunion. Despite sitting closer to Madagascar than Paris, Réunion is a fully integrated part of the French Republic. That means it enjoys direct representation in the French Parliament and access to serious European Union infrastructure funding. And the island needs that support. The interior of Réunion is dominated by massive volcanic craters with incredibly steep walls. This geography forces almost all human civilization to hug the very edges of the coast. This tension between French political ambition and the island's restrictive geography turned a standard road project into a multi-billion-dollar struggle against the elements. Getting between the island's capital and its main port means relying on a narrow coastal road built in the 1950s. On one side, drivers face cyclones with 100-mile-per-hour winds. On the other, constant erosion sends giant boulders hurtling down the cliff face directly onto the traffic below. The breaking point arrived in March 2006, when an entire section of the cliff gave way. The resulting rockslide crushed the vehicles below, killing 2 people. The government decided to push the traffic safely offshore. This schematic map outlines their 3-part solution: a solid elevated dike, a tunnel drilled through a protruding cliff, and an elevated viaduct out over the water. But the geology wouldn't cooperate. Early drilling tests revealed the cliff rock was too unstable to support a tunnel. Engineers adapted by extending the viaduct and dike sections to cover the entire distance instead. By abandoning the tunnel, the designers committed to building the entire highway out over the open ocean, trading the danger of a crumbling mountain for the relentless power of the sea. Building a 5-kilometer highway directly over the ocean is a massive undertaking. Doing it when the nearest continental landmass is over 1,600 kilometers away creates a logistical nightmare. The construction team had to become self-sufficient. They built 2 huge concrete factories directly on the island, specifically to cast the enormous hollow box girders that would form the bridge spans. To get those colossal pieces into the water, they brought in a custom-built barge from Poland. This machine would sail out, plant 8 steel legs into the seabed for stability, and carefully lower the concrete foundations directly into the ocean. Once the piers were set, a specialized beam launcher crept along the top. To keep perfectly balanced, it would pick up 2 deck segments at a time and place them on opposite sides of a pier simultaneously. The system worked. By 2017, after 4 years of precise repetition, the team completed the Grande Chaloupe viaduct, officially the longest bridge in France. But the technical success of the bridge didn't translate to the rest of the route. Construction on the dike was about to prove that a billion-euro bridge means very little if you run out of rocks. The bridge segments relied on high-tech casting, but the dike required a brute force volume of material. This cross-section shows the mechanic. Waves hit outer concrete blocks, and the energy is sapped as water flows through layers of 7 million cubic meters of rock. The government planned to source that stone locally by opening 2 massive new quarries. The pushback was immediate. Local residents and environmental groups filed lawsuits, arguing the heavy blasting and truck traffic would choke the island in dust and shatter the local ecosystems. Réunion is known for its biodiversity. Heavy quarrying at the coastline posed a direct threat to the fragile coral reefs sitting just beneath the surface. Furthermore, the noise and silt from the proposed disruption would interfere with sensitive whale migration routes and feeding grounds. The courts sided with the environment and shut the new quarries down. Project managers pivoted to a different source, the island's farmers. For years, volcanic basalt had littered local agricultural fields. The government offered to haul those boulders away to build the dike, clearing the land for planting in the process. This agricultural alliance kept the bulldozers moving, but the farmers were unknowingly feeding an impossible appetite, covering up an administrative error that was about to halt the entire project. An internal audit revealed a massive mathematical failure. The original estimate of 7 million cubic meters was wrong. The revised calculation on the right shows they actually needed 12 million. The planners were short by 5 million cubes of rock. The local farmer supply dried up almost immediately. Importing raw stone from South Africa proved too expensive, and by 2019, construction ground to a complete halt. As the highway sat empty, errors began to compound on the finished sections. In 2021, inspectors realized thousands of the protective armor blocks had been installed incorrectly. Fixing that mistake cost an extra 20 million euros. In 2022, the local council voted on a final fix to connect the missing stretch. They decided to abandon the dike and build another viaduct over the water, the very design they originally rejected for being too expensive. This decision tacks another 700 million euros onto the bill. And because the project had been stalled for years, the specialized barge required to build the piers had already been sailed back to Europe. A $2 billion highway with a missing middle section proves a difficult reality of megabuilds. Pouring the concrete is the easy part. The real challenge is surviving the cascade of logistical bottlenecks, environmental lawsuits, and simple human errors.